I'm Mike Esneault, and welcome to the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge's AC23 Artist Legacy Series podcast. This is a series where we talk to artists who are doing amazing things in the areas of the arts, including performance, education, production, as well as arts advocacy. We record this series in the Virginia and John Nolan Black Box Studio, as well as in the Jan and Bill Grimes recording studio here at the Carrie Rouge Community Arts Center. Be sure to visit artsbr.org for more information on all the great things we are doing here at the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge. Hope you enjoyed the podcast series, and thanks for tuning in. Wow. Bravo, John. Thank you for being here. And,
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome all of our AC23 Plus Artist Legacy Series viewers and listeners to another session. And this time it's a real super honor and pleasure to have Mr. John Fedchock here.
Great to be here.
John is, I might be here a while if I just do all the accolades, but let's just start with just a world-class, one of the premier trombonists alive today, and amazing arranger, Grammy-nominated arranger, composer, band leader, and let's do a little resume stuff. So, you know, you did 7 years with Woody Herman?
Yeah, yeah.
Along with that, let me get some names straight. I mean, these are very familiar names, but you've also worked with T.S. Monk, Jerry Mulligan, Louis Bellson, Manhattan Jazz Orchestra, John Faddis, and I'm sure that's just like a touch of a deep resume.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate to be able to work with a lot of great players.
Well, I mean, so how did it start? Like, you're from Ohio?
Yeah, I grew up in northern Ohio, Cleveland area.
Okay. So was it just, did you grow up from a musical family, or?
Not particularly, no. I just got interested in music through, the school music program. Started playing trombone at age 9. They brought all of us students all of us fourth graders into a room with all the instruments, and I just went right to the trombone. I'm not sure why, but
Yeah.
Kind of developed a little bit of an aptitude for it, and when I was about 12 or 13, I had an uncle who said, if you're going to play the trombone, you need to know who Tommy Dorsey is.
Well, yeah.
So he gave me a couple albums of Tommy Dorsey. Matter of fact, the first tune I put on was East of the Sun.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Which for our listeners, by the way, I should have said that. That's the first tune we played. So
yeah.
So
so that was kind of cool. And obviously, the way he played, he was a virtuoso. So it just didn't even feel like the same instrument at that time. But as I started to get more interested in that, I got to high school and started playing in the jazz ensemble at the time, and that kind of got me interested in like seeking out other trombonists. So I discovered a player by the name of Irby Green. From Mobile, Alabama, and he was my first big influence because he was one of these guys that could do everything. He had a beautiful sound, he could play lead, he had great technique, he was a great soloist, could play beautiful ballads and the blues, and so it led me to believe I needed to be able to do all that stuff too. So It was a good first role model to have as a young kid.
Right.
And so I started following at the time, all the big bands were still around touring. So anytime they'd come through the area, I'd go hear one of the groups. But Woody Herman actually brought his band to my high school, and they did a concert and an afternoon clinic, and that really got me excited about playing the trombone and playing, and realizing at the time that music was not just a museum piece. You know, they were doing Chick Corea and John Coltrane, and
Well, what year would
this was 1974.
Okay, yeah.
So they were still doing, and they were doing great. In addition to things from his old book from the 40s and 50s, they were doing really modern things from that era. So that led me to believe, oh, this is still kind of alive and well. Maybe it's something I can get involved in.
Right.
So that got me excited. And then I took some jazz improvisation courses at a local community college, and that turned me on to like checking out people like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, which led me to J.J. Johnson and a ton of other players. So I got very excited about playing music, but I wasn't quite ready to become a performer. So I enrolled at Ohio State University in the music ed program to figure I would just be a teacher. But the more I played and the more I got excited about it and the more I would go out to hear players in clubs and eventually start playing in clubs, I realized that maybe there's a chance that I could do this for a living. And then the school started a jazz degree, so I started taking some of those courses. So I ended up with 2 degrees from Ohio State, jazz studies and music ed. But my goal was to get good enough to get into Eastman School of Music, because at the time, Woody Herman, which became my favorite big band, he was getting all his trombone players from Eastman. So I thought, oh, there's something there
something
that I need to know about. So, and lo and behold, after a year of study there, I got called to go out on the road with Woody's band. So.
So by the time you got to Eastman, you were working towards was it a master's degree?
Well, I started at Eastman for my master's degree.
Okay.
So I got 2 undergrad degrees,
Right.
and then enrolled in Eastman in the fall of '79, and by July of '80, I was on the road. So whatever it was, I was very, very pointed about what I wanted to do. So
was there any hesitation when you got that call?
no, there really wasn't. Unfortunately, I had supportive parents. They knew it was something I really loved and wanted to do. And but all along, even when I went on the road, you never know if you're going to make it or not. Because a gig like that, it's not. You don't just get hired and keep the gig. If you don't do well or fit in, they send you home. So I stayed enrolled at Eastman for 5 years. I paid. They don't have it anymore, but it was one class called leave of absence that cost $50 a semester. So I just stayed enrolled.
So you weren't actually doing any coursework. It was
no,
just you were.
I was just
you had
the
your foot
one
in
course
that
I
door.
signed up for was leave of absence. So at 5 years later, in 1985, got to around the holidays in December, and Woody said, "I'm going to go out for 5 months with an all-star group. So you guys are all on your own." And I thought, well, what if maybe I could just. So I called up Rayburn Wright, who was head of the department there, and I said, "Any chance I could get back in a few weeks?" And he said, "Well, you're already enrolled. Just add some classes."
Right.
So all the classes I needed to finish my graduate work were not available, but Ray said, just take them individual study with me. So I finished my second year of grad school in one semester and went back out for another 2 years.
Right.
So
So a total of about 7 years.
7 years, yeah, minus 5 months, yeah. And then I moved to New York straight from the road.
So I'm curious, going back to when you were a kid and kind of getting into it. So was it from the get-go, was your mindset improvisationally oriented?
Not really, no, but I do think that was the one thing that drew me to jazz, because I was kind of an introverted kid that, would have, problems like meeting new people or conversing with new people or whatever, and being able to improvise in another language kind of helped me to kind of bridge that gap and make that connection and everything. So that's what really drew me to it, is that I could put myself into the music, and for some reason it wasn't as intimidating as talking to somebody at the time. So it really made a difference, and that's what made me want to delve into it deeper and deeper, because you have complex thoughts, but you can't always execute them, especially on a trombone. The learning curve's kind of steep.
Right.
So I got really into practice, and slowly but surely felt more confident with that language.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so were you one of these? Because as I've taught for years, and just growing up myself, you have all different types in those early years, like the really prodigious young students who are just way ahead of the game.
Sure.
Were you one of those kids? Or?
I would have to say I was always playing first chair.
Okay.
But I had definitely had it, in critiquing as a teacher now occasionally, in critiquing my former self. I had a lot of holes in my technique. But stylistically, I thought I had a good handle on that.
Yeah.
And I knew how to play a melody well, so that was good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and from what you're saying, like by the time you got the call to do Woody's band, I'm sure you knew a lot of that music. I mean, you were very familiar with.
I was, and I had some of it memorized when I got on the bandstand for the first time.
I mean, so when that first night, was it just band?
It was still very scary because it was 3 sets, so they played most of the book. And I had like 6 different solos, but I was aware of all of them, so I kind of had already practiced that group of solos. So when I got up, it wasn't as intimidating as it would have been if someone just said, "Yeah, you're next." I kind of knew I was next, and yeah.
That's great.
And I got to meet, over the time on the band, I got to meet all my heroes. When I was in college, I became really infatuated. Still one of my favorite players ever, Carl Fontano.
Oh, wow.
Who's a
You had a
Louisiana
connection.
guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we ended up becoming really good friends, and I got to hang at his house, and I knew him. We recorded an album together, so it's really kind of cool to meet your heroes. And he's one of, they say never meet your heroes because they could disappoint you. No disappointment there.
Right,
He's
right.
Awesome guy, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, one of these films that we did, we had Byron Stripling on here, who if
We
I-
were in
if I
school
remember-
together. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Another great musician.
Sure.
Well, so you're actually, I mean, you're living in New York now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you? What's that scene like? Are you? You're obviously doing some moving around right now, doing some master classes and that type, and some concerts.
Yeah.
But are you primarily in New York? Are you on the road a lot? Or
I'm on the road a lot. It's kind of changed over the years. When I first moved to New York, I was kind of doing anything and everything.
Right.
Recording work, Broadway shows, live gigs, writing work, writing for hire, all that stuff. But my primary goal in music was to be a jazz musician. So I always gave that the priority, and as my career in jazz became a little more lucrative, or at least that I could pay the bills doing it, I started letting some of that other stuff go, because I mean, the higher quality stuff I kept doing, but in general, I just wanted to play jazz and write jazz and have my own bands, and being able to be on the road, touring and doing those types of things kind of helps make all that work. So, but that's also hard to balance with people that expect you to be in New York at all times. So, so you have, I had to let people know, look, I'm gonna be traveling more, so I may not be available for this or that. Right. Which turned out to be great. I was kind of betting on myself, and it paid off. So now all I do is jazz work. I don't do a lot of the general business kind of work in New York, except for an occasional recording session, and some big bands that I enjoy playing with.
Right.
But it's not like I have to play with anybody who calls me. I can be a little more discerning about what it is I like to do. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned the writing thing, which is a thing I want to talk to you about, and the arranging and the composing. But before we do that, let's see if we can play another tune.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So we had talked about maybe doing You Don't Know What Love Is. Huh?
Yeah, that's a nice ballad that
I love that song.
I tend to like play, yeah.
Wonderful, John. Thank you so much, man. Well, I had mentioned just before we played that tune, being interested in the picking your brain about your career in arranging and composing, and right off the bat, like just playing that tune, I'm curious about how you feel how learning the art of arranging and composing affects your playing.
Well, they kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've noticed over the years that my melodic writing has changed with the evolution of my improvisation and hearing, you know, voice leading in the upper extensions of the chords and things like that. So I feel like the melodies I write now are more interesting than the melodies I wrote earlier. They may be a little less accessible for everybody, but I try to keep a melodic element to it so it's not too abstract. And vice versa. I mean, when I'm improvising, I'm not only my primary goal is to make a melody that makes sense and kind of follow the integrity of the line, kind of letting the notes lead me to where they should. But at the same time, I'm also thinking maybe more vertically than I did earlier on, where there's a grouping of notes, and if your line takes you there, you know, okay, well, the voice leading for this note happens to go here, and so it does go hand in hand. My writing and playing, definitely they've kind of evolved at I would say different rates, because I primarily consider myself a player that writes rather than vice versa. But yeah, they both. It feels like they both changed over time together.
Well, so what was your entree into arranging? Was it when you got to Eastman? Because I know Ray Wright is this you know, was this guru. This
Yeah, I mean, I was, as mentioned, I was a big band fan, so I had the sound in my head. I just didn't know how to get it. Mm-hmm. And Ray's classes were so methodically taught that he just made it feel like it was easy, you know. Right. And like I said, I was only there for 1 year. I took 1 year of beginning arranging with him, and then I went on the road. And he hadn't written his book yet. There was really,
I'm a huge fan of that book.
Yeah, and there really was no like consummate text. Mm-hmm. So I just brought my notes from class on the road, and my first charts for Woody Herman's band were based on my notes from Ray's class.
But your first charts as an arranger
were
for Woody.
For Woody Herman, a professional band, so no pressure there, right? Yeah, there was someone that was on the band that was kind of the musical director for the first couple of years, named John Otto, great writer. And so I didn't feel any pressure to have to do anything, but we were on location. We had a gig in New Orleans we were there. The whole goal was we were going to be in a club during the winter months and then tour during the summer.
Okay.
But the club, for one reason or another, did not go well. And but we were there for like 6 months. So I said, if I'm going to try anything, this would be the time to do it. So I would bring little sections in, ask the guys to stay after the gig at the club. Can you guys stick around for 20 minutes and read this sax soli or run the shout chorus or whatever? And eventually got a chart I felt pretty good with, put it all together, and Woody liked it. And so we were playing it a lot. And then when John Otto left the band, Woody just assumed I was a writer, and he started giving me assignments. So I kind of got thrown right into the fire.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's such a blessing, though. My own experience as an arranger is, it's a lot of times if you're writing, and let's say the players aren't exactly of the caliber that you would prefer, you might get a misrepresentation of what you wrote, but that's such a luxury.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
got Woody's band to.
Yeah, definitely got spoiled there. Yeah. Fortunately, I moved to New York, and there are great players there too, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, that was really nice to know that what I wrote was going to sound just the way I wrote it, good or bad, and you could make decisions based on that,
Right.
not worry about the performance element part of it.
And what was the album, the Woody album that you arranged for that was nominated for the Grammy?
Oh, well, there were two, but the big one was called 50th Anniversary Tour, which all the charts were mine except for one tune. And yeah,
I'm actually familiar with that album. So, I mean, most of that stuff is, if I remember correctly, kind of more straight-ahead bebop-ish.
Yeah, and that was one of the great things one of the compliments I've received from a lot of Woody Herman fans and historians and all that was that when I first heard the band and into the moments when I first joined the band, he was drawing on more pop elements and things like that. And the greatest compliment was people saying you brought Woody back full circle before he passed away. Right. And you could tell he really loved that part of it, but he also loved that the guys in the band loved doing it too. And whenever someone would leave, we'd get someone who had that same fire for playing that kind of music. So it was really not only well played, but very authentic the way it was perceived by the players too. And I think Woody really felt that, and he kind of felt that energy that he had with the band in the 60s that was really popular, that was a Grammy-winning band back then too. So we loved, we'd be playing gigs and the band would be calling out, like Woody was perplexed about what to play. Guys were yelling out some of the stuff written in the 50s to play, because we just loved playing. It was a great book. The book was like that thick, so, yeah.
What a career. I mean,
Yeah.
that guy.
52 years as a band leader, yeah.
Well, so what was it like, because I know a big part of your life now is, and has been for a while, as a band leader.
Yeah.
So, like, what was that like, transitioning from being basically a sideman for a long time?
Well, it was, being musical director for Woody was helpful in that, because the band, Woody didn't rehearse the band. He just wanted it, whatever we were going to do, it had to happen on the stage. So if I wrote a new chart, I had to rehearse the band. I had to get them together, and I had to, talk about roadmaps or whatever. I was trying to be like Ray Wright he taught to be super clear about everything, so I learned how to do that really well. So when I came to New York to organize my band, number one, I was comfortable in that chair doing that, but also a lot of the people that had gone through the band over the years moved to New York. So I had a core of folks that had already played my music and knew people that would fit that well, and I had ideas myself. So getting the right group of folks wasn't that big a challenge, and even though at the time it wasn't really paying anything, it was a rehearsal band, people just like playing good music. So as long as you make the music clear and fun and giving everybody a chance to be themselves, play solos and all that stuff, really kind of developed a nice little esprit de corps. I basically have, except for a couple guys, one person passed away, a couple people moved away, but in general, I have the same band I've had for 30 years.
Well,
same
that's
personnel.
a testament.
Yeah.
To,
So that means they're
great
enjoying
band.
themselves, I guess. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, so if that's the case, I mean, when you're writing, is it kind of that Duke Ellington thing where you're really writing for those people in that band?
Yeah, it kind of is, but also it's a little bit of the way Woody's band was. You would write for players, but Woody's band was kind of set up in a way that each chair had its own kind of sound.
Right.
Like third trumpet was one kind of jazz player, and the fourth trumpet was a different kind of jazz player featured on, because of the music that was in the book, and the library was so big, he didn't want people passing parts around. So if you had a ballad feature on trumpet, it was always fourth trumpet, things like that. So part of that kind of snuck into what I do too, because we started out, the band was with some of my charts from Woody's band. So. Kind of had that flavor anyway, and I kind of took that, but over time I have written more specifically for people, because people have different sensibilities harmonically, and just the kind of just general energy and intensity they play in. If you throw them into the wrong situation, it doesn't quite make sense. So I am considering that much more than I did when I first started writing for the band.
Now, as a composer, do you have sort of are you one of those people that has a method, like you're always writing in the morning? Is that the best time? Or
No,
you just
no.
do it
Like I said, I mean, playing was always my first love. So writing is always when I have spare time or a deadline, or
Deadlines help.
yeah, some kind of commission work or something like that. So,
Right.
but at the same time, one of the deadlines is that you always want to be working toward the next recording. So. Sometimes the choice of what I write is based on a need that needs to be filled for a program on an album.
Mm-hmm.
So it varies, and I don't do a lot of work for hire unless it's a commission. And usually when it's a commission, they want me to write the way I write. So I don't do a lot of like commercial writing.
Right.
So I can kind of keep, even if I'm doing a commission, I as long as I know what soloists they want me to write for, I can kind of write in a way that also allows me to use it with my group and record it with my group, which I've done many times.
Right. Well, tell me about your latest album, because is that, if I'm right, that's a small group record.
Yeah, it's a quartet gig. 2024 was the centennial of J.J. Johnson. He would have been 100 years old this year. So last year at about this time, in September or October, I was thinking about a trip. I was going to be in Indiana doing a residency at University of Indiana for 5 weeks. And so I thought, well, maybe I'd do a little gig. There's a really nice club in Indianapolis called the Jazz Kitchen. And I called them, and they said they might have some possible dates. So I said, well, JJ's birthday is right around when I'm going to be there. What do you think about doing a gig, like a celebration kind of a thing? I do his music, play his charts and his original charts. And they said, oh, that sounds good. So we booked it, and I didn't think much of it. I just figured it was just going to be a fun day playing JJ's music with some Indianapolis musicians, because I wanted to keep it local, a local celebration. So I met with the rhythm section, great players, and we rehearsed for like an hour, 3 days before the gig. And then we got up to the gig, we did a little sound check, and just before I walk on the stage, the sound engineer says, would you like me to record this? And usually when a sound engineer asks you that, it's like a 2-track thing. All you hear is the trombone and half of the piano.
Right,
and,
sure.
But the gig was over, and I said, yeah, send me that whenever you get a chance. The next day he sends me all these multi-track files.
Stems, you got the whole
Yeah,
thing. Right.
yeah. So I sent it to the engineer that I work with regularly when I'm producing things. And I said, what do you think? We have something to work with? Because you never know if the raw data is workable. And he said, well, let me throw, I'll just do like a test take of one tune, and you let me know what you think. And it sounded really nice. So I said, well, let's work on this. We'll mix and edit. And because we were really stretching on the gig. So we had to get it down to an hour
Right.
on the CD. But the first tune we did had a little electronic glitch we couldn't get out, so we couldn't use that. So the remaining tunes ended up with the edits and everything just at about an hour.
Yeah.
And so I figured, okay, well, that's my album project for the year, and because, once an album comes out, you want to promote it by touring, and I've been doing this since the beginning of October. I've been touring amongst these residencies and school things. I've been doing clubs,
Yeah.
celebrating the album and using musicians from the area, so it's been a lot of fun.
Well, it's to that point, you're going to be playing tomorrow night at Snug Harbor in New Orleans.
Yes, yeah.
With some of the really fantastic musicians down there.
Yeah, Mike
Yeah.
Polera,
Yeah.
Mina Scott, and Gerald Watkins. I'm looking forward to that. We've never played together. I've met Mike many times, heard him play many times, and I've heard Amina play. I've never met Gerald. But it's fun music to play, and aside from a couple little things that need rehearsing, it's just going to be just let loose,
Yeah. No, those are all friends of mine, and I know you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, yeah.
I know they're going to have a good time.
Great.
Well, and tonight, I mean, really the reason why you're in Baton Rouge today
Yes.
is because you're playing with the LSU Jazz Ensemble with a concert tonight, playing all your charts. Correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I haven't met the students yet. That's coming up next.
Yeah.
But yeah, Doug Stone's been working with the band and getting everything ready to go, so I can just walk in and talk about the little fine tuning
Sure.
details
Yeah.
in the rehearsal. And yeah, we're doing I think 5 or 6 of my things that I sent down, early on before the school year started.
Right.
And
So they have no excuses.
well, it's all, the great thing about jazz is it's so objective and subjective, and everybody has a different idea of what it is. So
Sure.
it may not completely match what I do, but that's kind of an interesting thing that I've enjoyed over my musical career is even if you're playing identical music with different musicians, it's going to take on a different
Yeah.
flavor, a different color, a different approach, different energy and intensity, and that keeps my ears open. If it's always the same, I'm going to end up playing the same, and it's going to get
Sure.
kind of old hacks. But there's always something different and new, and that's also what's a cool thing about playing with younger musicians. They always have a different concept of what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's fabulous. So once you finish up in Louisiana, what's coming up next?
I fly to New York. I'm home for like 3 days, and then I go to. I'll be in Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska for about a week, and then I go to New Mexico for a day. Then I'm back for maybe another week, and then I'm going to Europe
Yeah.
to kind of finish out the year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, look, I want to thank you again for
Yeah.
participating in this. And
Yeah.
Like I said at the top of it, it's a real honor for me.
Well, I appreciate it. It's great playing with you, too.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Well, a tune we had talked about maybe sending the listeners and viewers out on was Just in Time.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
You want to do that?
The Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge would like to acknowledge our generous sponsors, the Shell Corporation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development, and the City of Baton Rouge.